I'm going to present today is a mix of PowerPoint. I will also show you a little bit of QInsights, but within an hour of a webinar, we cannot do everything live because also analysis always it takes a bit. So you can kind of see what I've prepared, and so you get a little bit of a feeling how this can actually look like. But before I get into that new method, which I called qualitative analysis, conversational analysis, with AI, and everybody seems to start to abbreviate things. So we have a QBA approach from David Morgan, we have the NITA approach from King, and I can't do everything now at once, sharing that. But look up if you're interested also in that NITA qualitative analysis. If you go to Google, you will also find that is also a conversational approach for automatic analysis. And so I thought it is with the power of AI. So let's call it to the power of AI. But before we get there, I want to take you very shortly to why suddenly I leave coding. I've also been doing that for over 30 years in special software like Atlas, MaxQDA, there's NVivo, there's a bunch of these programs that helped us with qualitative analysis in the past. So why I'm actually leaving that path. So a few words about that, and then I will walk you through that 4-step process, and then we do that step by step with analysis examples. We do have to make a distinction between different ways of utilizing generative AI. So we have the all-purpose chatbots, and I see still a lot of people using those. What I would also have, some concerns. I mean, I use it a lot as well for improving my writing, for getting ideas and all that kind of stuff. But if we deal with qualitative data, there's also some ethical and concerns we need to think about, and data security concerns. But if you work with all-purpose chatbots, there are also a number of things which we will talk about, which also leads me to my approach as well. And then we have tools like MaxQDA, on also NVivo and Atlas AI, that have integrated AI in their current framework. And those are slightly different. And then there's also some people who have written small things on Python. You have to have some technical skills. I don't have those. I always work with tech people together to kind of approximate what we've been doing the last 30 years with coding. And this is a distinction we need to make, because those tools behave differently. And then we have purpose-built apps for specific tasks, and also qualitative analysis, and that's the app I've been working on with the name QInsights. Just to remind us, why are we coding in the first place? Well, we have 200 or 300 pages of transcripts, sometimes even more. We need to manage and organize those data. Then we start coding those data in order then to retrieve data by their codes. And of course, why we code, we already think and reflect and understand. So it's not simply tagging the data. So a lot of things also go along while you think about a code label and all of that. So in the end, while coding and also while retrieving data, while codes helps us interpreting the data, compare and contrast based on different concepts to find patterns. And also what I hear also a lot lately is, well, it's about for transparency and credibility and consistency. We don't get that when we work with AI. Well, keep those things in mind, whether this is something it cannot be done in another way. There's one framework that I want to briefly mention from Christina Silva and Nick Wolf, the 5-level QDA framework, and what they're talking about, the strategies and tactics. So some of the things that we see on the slide are strategies. That's what we want to achieve. And then, of course, if you were in academics, you have all the methodology around it. But what I'm talk about is not methodology, it's about method. So it's more the tactics you can use to achieve what you want to achieve. And the question then is the answer still coding, or can we do that in different ways? So and now we're talking about chatbots. Yeah. Remember, I distinguish between 3 different things. So the chatbots cannot systematically link text segments to code. And also you can ask them to code, but what they're actually really doing is themes. Just 2 weeks ago, I do these things on a regular basis where it's a new model. I try things again, and they become better and better. So I was using 3.0 Mini from OpenAI and testing iterative coding, whether it would now be able to do that. It wasn't able to do that last summer. So that means if you upload one document and ask for codes, it maybe gives you 10, 12. So it's not really codes. If I code a document, then I might have 100 for one document, 1 hour interview, and not just like 10 topics. And then you do the second interview and you get other codes again. And then you have to kind of compare and what are the same, different names, but they mean the same thing. So because it didn't remember what it did with the other document. So now you can upload more documents, context windows have become larger, and it kind of remembers what topics it has suggested in the first document and seems to reapply that again, so you don't end up with something different for every document. But again, I got like 10, and then with some iteration 12, and then I tried also with 20 interviews, so that some of them actually quite long, and then I got 8. You would expect if it's coding, you'll get many more. So that whole idea that you tag something and the AI kind of then remembers all the data segments where that code is attached to, that doesn't exist. You can then ask for quotes, but then it's kind of reanalyzing the data based on one particular code again. So LLMs, large language models, don't work in that way. And we talked about qualitative coding is iterative and reflective, and chatbots don't really kind of know why they attach that or think that code is relevant for that document. So it's more they analyze the entire document and see what topics are relevant in that document without making that links to those tech segments. Well, and the other problem we still have when we use all-purpose chatbots is, the data privacy and security issues by directly uploading into a browser to a provider of an LLM, large language model, and there is still hallucination. If it doesn't know something, or if you by accident hit the context window, it starts kind of making up things. I can't go into detail with all of that, but there is more to tell behind that. But of course, the focus today should be on the CA to the power of AI. So now into existing tools, then we have similar issues that if you would allow it to suggest codes, it doesn't maybe paragraph by paragraph, and so it doesn't remember what it did previously. And of course we know what we code. We also know or can then look it up. Oh, there was something in the other document, and we go back to that. So oftentimes it's different names used for the same ideas, and of course, there's no context awareness. The researcher has been into the field, knows much more about the data, and can interpret the data better and attach the right codes. There is, by the way, all literature that is backing that up. But for this presentation, I just kind of picked out the basics to give you the big story. And in the end, there is the need to double check everything. And so even if we see in like some programs where you can, which is all a nice support, you have a code already, and you give it a definition, and then the AI assistant in the program can go and look in a document and attach those codes. But you will always need to check it. So it's not automated. And that's, I think, what the big hope is, that suddenly AI can automate all that labor-intensive coding. So it's a nice assistance, a nice support, nice help, but we still need the human in the loop. And if that's the case, why don't we just skip that labor-intensive step? And this is what I can show you now how this actually works. So this brings us to CA to the power of AI. An important bit here is also the interaction between human and AI assistant. And it's all a matter of how you are actually approaching analysis. Yeah, it's this, oh, I don't want the AI to take it out of my hands, and I can't, it cannot be replicated, it's not transparent, I don't know what AI is doing. And well, it all has to do with how you use it. I mean, what I see a lot, and might also have to do with the hype that we see on the internet, that it can be done all in seconds now. And then they ask with the first question, they kind of expect the answer to a research question. So it's a prompt like that, can you please extract all of the concepts for this and that, and then relate it to that other concept, and basically in the end already draw me a model. No, that doesn't work. It doesn't work when we do it, and it also doesn't work with AI. When you work with AI, think about it also how you approach it. You also build it up step by step. You start with getting to know your data on a descriptive level, also when we code. So all that way and how we approach data, we don't have to change, but we don't have to tag all the data. Yeah. So you start by asking the AI descriptive questions and then build it up to something that can maybe turn into a model at the end. Yeah. So this is what I have now come up structurally. So I've been first talking about it already. In December 23, I had this webinar live without coding at a question mark. And now we have March 2025. So first step, still, we should get to know our data. I can help with that also a little bit. If you have conducted the interviews, checked transcriptions, you're probably quite familiar with the data already. But you cannot evaluate what comes out at the other end if you're not familiar with the data. So that's an important first step. And then you go and prepare for analysis. And then, of course, depending on which app or environment you are using, there might be different ways also how to prepare the data. But I'm talking only, this is all done. We're talking about the analysis process. So then I'm saying that when you get to know your data, you then identify some topic themes of interest, and you might already know that based on your research question, you have a certain focus in your study. So then you kind of pick your first topic and think about a number of questions you can ask to explore that topic. Because we're not coding anymore, we're now asking questions. And so you first think about that. And then also analysis becomes transparent, and it becomes also replicable, difficult word. So somebody else can also do it. Yeah. If you then have that list of questions that you go through, somebody else can also do that. But, I showed that all in action. So you go and ask those questions. So now I'm writing here, do that with a meaningful subset of your data. Large language models are trained to summarize. So if you give them 20 interviews at once, then you get an answer, but it will be, very kind of high level, top level answer. So I suggest if you have 20 interviews, you have talked to 4 groups of people, or in my case here, it's 3 groups of people, just select one group. And I'm using again my dissertation data, so in total I had 57 interviews, but I started with 20 and 5 to 6 interviews from each of the, no, it's 16, from each of the 3 groups I've been working with. And then we can also see how we can add more data later on. And then you go into that iterative dialogue.
Step 1, start with themes or summaries. A bird's eye view brings things to light. Step 2, shape your path with questions wise. with open minds and goals in sight. Step 3, start the conversation now. Ask and follow where insights allow. Step 4, interpret right, your insights grow. Let patterns speak, let meaning show. Then loop again, go back, refine. Each topic takes its own sweet time. Steps 3 and 4, they work as one until your inside work is done. Learn to the power of AI. Ask your questions, talk it through. Explore, reflect, and synthesize. Let your data speak. You're in charge to analyze. Oh, you're in charge to analyze.
Let me start with step number 1. You start with the big picture. And here you can have AI summarize your document in the first step, or you can also ask for themes. And let me now go and show you how that. So this is the login screen from QInsights. And it is still the case that we have to be in the cloud, online, to work with large language models, because they're the ones we need for qualitative analysis, for the quality that we need. These large language models are too big that we could actually run them locally. So that was the dashboard, and you see I have a number of projects, and so here you see all my documents, and I have been grouping these documents by consumer type in my case. And let me just quickly show that. Yeah, so it's compulsive, compensatory, and utilitarian. I'll call it addictive to have a different, so like and compensatory and utilitarian, and it's about impulse buying, and compensatory about shopping as compensating for some emotional need. So these were my interviews, and I prepared the analysis here already. So now we can extract a number of themes, and then you can read those themes. We can also check, where in the documents, that the theme actually occurs, and so on. So that is also, and that is not a good example. So here we have, sometimes it's highlighting just small things, but the idea is that you can go back to the original source. So to also add this step of validity, it's not all a black box here, but you can go and see where the AI has gotten the ideas from. This is not the end of the analysis, because sometimes there is tracks themes and that's it. I mean, we have thematic analysis. Well, their themes are at the end of the analysis. So we're going through careful process of coding and then to the end. And that's what I've said before. Even if you ask in a generic chatbot to code, well, this is what it comes up with. If you ask it to code, it comes up with themes, because that's what it's trained to do and what it can do well. So then you start looking what's in the data. If you still need a little bit, I think like it's more of a content mind map, and see which topic you want to start with. And I can also show you and I'm just looking. If I remember, probably won't remember all of that, but see, you can also do theme analysis this is only done for one group, so we get fewer themes. But you can, every time you do it, you get slightly different results. There is about probably 80% overlap, but there will be a theme that might be in one theme analysis and not in another one. So it's more like for you to get to know the data, what topics are in there, and then dive deep from that. And yeah, just to give you an idea. So when you start out and you select documents, these are the analysis options you have. What I just showed you was theme analysis. And the other thing to get to know your data is you're looking at the summaries. So we saw that in the PowerPoint. So automatically we create a summary of each document to give as a quick reminder of what's in the document. So these are the kind of two ways where here the AI supports you in getting to know the data and then to pick a particular topic and then to come up for like, how do I want to explore that topic now? So after you have chosen a topic that you want to explore, in that case in my case, it's going to be that topic of impulse buying behavior, also to ask people about planned buying behavior and a lot of other contextual factors. But of course, it's a meaningful starting point. This whole study is on impulse buying, but also self-identity. But let's start with that one first. You could make use of AI and say, well, I have already conducted some interviews and I want to further explore the topic of impulse buying. What kind of question can I ask my AI assistant to retrieve relevant data? So there's also a general chat in QInsights. So I just ask it to give me some ideas. So this is just brainstorming. This is not the questions I actually chose, but this is just kind of like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about that. I can kind of come up with some questions here. So this is actually what I ended up choosing, and I had those questions in a text editor just next to me on the screen, so I can just copy and paste it for the different respondents group. And I did also, while I was doing that, was iterating a little bit on that and adding some more questions as well. And once we get back to the graphic, we can talk about that. So, but you start with something, and it might also be that point number 4 and 5 that could have been a topic on its own. That was probably all a bit too much for a first topic. But I did now go through all of these 5 steps to prepare this example analysis. But these are things you're also going to notice, and with the first subgroup, you kind of like, well, that post-purchase and strategy to control that I take as another topic, so I do that another time because that is now getting too much. So then you have your series of questions that you're going to ask, and then now you need to pick your set of documents to start out with. So in my analysis, I've now done it for the compensatory buyers and for the addicted buyers. So only 2 groups. Of course, the third group, in my case, utilitarian buyers, people who don't like to go shopping. It's a nice comparison group, of course. And the questions I now came up with were inductive, purely kind of thinking about, okay, how can I explore that topic? But I could have been doing it also in a more deductive manner. There are definitions of impulse buying in the literature. So I could have also, if you go back, like how do respondents define impulse buying? I could have also said, well, the literature defines impulse buying as spontaneous impulse buying, reminder impulse buying, and yeah, I forgot my dissertation a long time ago. Reminder if you already had it in mind, but something that triggers you if you see like something on sale or something like that. But so there are certain definitions, so that would be a more deductive way of going about it. But that's options how you could set up your way of questioning. So now I went through these set of questions with one group, and this is the PDF output, and you see in the blue boxes, you see always the question. Let's go and look in QInsights how that actually looks like. So all analysis is archived, and that is the chat I did with the compensatory buyers. So how do respondents define impulse buying? And yeah, then you get the answer. You always can check the references, as we've seen before, with where there is something in the data that speaks to that, and there's also a search option where you can quickly see that. So now you can, I won't stop here, and then I added, provide a summary, because then I saw a quick, might be also in the report, nicer to have like the main points. So I asked for summaries in between. And then I go for the reasons and the triggers and so on. So I go through all my series of questions here. And again, that's another one I added here. So these are all the items they purchased. So I just want to like pull out all the items. So I have a nice overview here. So I don't have to do that myself, and AIs it can do that much better and faster than we can do that. So we're talking about triggers here, and after the purchase and so on. So you see, I'm going through all of these questions here. And what I often like to do at the end is to to have a case summary. So now I ask it to write a case summary on, this is not the case summary yet. Because that's still about how the trigger relates. So let me go to so this is now the case study of David. So it's kind of like a compressed version of everything that was said before, and about Stephen, about Elvira, and so on. So I have 5 people here in this analysis. And then I ask for similarities and differences to pull out. That's also an easy thing to pull out for an AI, so that you don't have to do that. And then unique aspects of the story. So that whole thing can be either saved as PDF or copy and pasted into Word. So you have everything. And when I did that, that was quite a number of pages. So I thought, well, maybe I did overdone it with my 5 subtopic areas, and maybe the first 3 would have been good enough. But this is then what you then realize maybe with the first round, and you can adjust that then while you go on. So now you get all these question answer from the AI, and this is not your final output. And also what also talking about validation, and there was quite some overlap as well, because this AI is analyzing things in context. So when I ask about the definition, it was also writing about that, also telling me a little about triggers and or what they bought. And then that came back when I asked about triggers again. So that was also kind of a nice validation. If that was Elvira, and that already was in that answer above. So there is also then some validation if you put your question in a way that there might be a little bit of overlap in the question. Or you also see, I also saw some mix-up in between. So you always have to kind of stay in the loop there as well. And as well, also then important to write it up yourself. I saw that actually in the report, and said she wasn't watching TV, that there's some mix-up here. So you, like I said, this is not the answer. You always have to stay in the loop in case your AI assistant, treated as an assistant, also can make some mistakes. Within that QInsights environment, there is literally no hallucination. It's always working with the data you have uploaded, all the data in your project that you have set up. And it's also, we have tested this as well, that if you ask it something that's not in the data, and you know that's not in the data, it will actually give you an answer and say, I cannot find that in the data. Sometimes it's always looking when it finds something and gives you a very vague answer. Yeah, it could be a little, hint, but it's not really in the data. Or if it's not really there, it just tells you it's not in the data. Whereas in a general purpose chatbot, it will just come up with some answer. So that's also a bit of a difference. So here is then a bit of my synthesis writing based on these pages of the output. And then I also kind of pulled out some key concepts. And yeah, and that's also a bit easier now for you to kind of present the results, because you cannot read all the text here. So now we have all these topics here, the definition of impulse buying. And so I did run that whole dialogue with the compensatory shoppers and also with the addictive shoppers. So I had two outputs, and also the third group I didn't run yet, that I could then write a synthesis and pull out the main points here. And then you see the difference here. And now you can also see that also, because you get a lot of text written, but you can also then pull out the concepts. And that, I guess, reminds you back at coding. So that, like, there is no need to actually do that. And behind all of these, spontaneous lack of planning, I have all the text, so the whole narrative is there. All quotations or quotes are there that support that narrative. And you have been reading all the story behind it by going through your questioning. So we have now the different triggers, trying to point out a little bit. So there's some similarities, both do it for emotional reasons, but there's also some difference here, but there's situational cues. Yeah, and then of course the stories behind it are always a bit different when you're writing this up in your essay. The items they buy, some overlap, some difference here. Post-purchase, and you're starting to see more difference here in terms of both do report also maybe guilt and regret. But we see on the addictive side, there is this, that's why it becomes an addiction potential cycle. You try to compensate for something you can't really compensate through buying, and that only gives temporary satisfaction because it doesn't address the core issues, and then you go shopping again. Yeah, and with the compensatory shoppers is more like a waste of money, and so it's not so much on the emotional side. And then we have strategies to deal with impulse buying in order to curb it. Yeah, so this is just to show you that, going back to why have we coded in data in the first place, to retrieve data via the codes by topics. And then also, relate things to each other. Well, we have exchanged that now. The tactic we have changed to retrieve data by asking questions. And you can also see, you can also aggregate that and come up with more abstract concepts if you want, or stay within your narrative structure. That, of course, is also possible. It all, I guess, depends on also your underlying methodological approach that you're using. So then we have been going through step 1, 2, 3, 4, synthesizing. But then, this goes in a loop. So we have done that with the compensatory bias and with the addictive bias. Still would need to do that with the third group here. And then I told you I had about 57 interviews. Now these were the first 16, but you could already see that I was able to extract some more abstract concepts. So if you feel like that you take a next subset of your data and nothing much is coming, or what I also could do with the next set of compensatory bias I'm looking at, or addicted bias, I can just shift to a more deductive approach and ask, do you see, I mean, are these the items they typically purchase, or are these the triggers you see in the data? And if not, what triggers do you see? So you can then switch from a very narrative, descriptive approach to a more deductive approach if you have a larger data set you are actually working with. And this data are now from my dissertation data, so it's academically informed. So with all projects, you might not have to go into such depth or have such an elaborate series of questions, maybe just, 3 simple questions for one topic. So there is a possibility of keeping it more simple or to go into more depths, and that also depends on the type of questions and the number of questions you are actually asking. Yeah, so this step 3 and 4, you will loop a couple of times. So first with your subgroups, and then we might take the next topic, which I think this was maybe already 2 topics that the whole post-purchase part could be a topic by itself, but the other part in this type of data could be the whole self-identity part and family background, life experience that led to a certain way of shopping. And that was already alluded to in this first set of questions. And this is also a nice thing about working with AI, because it does analyze the data in its context, more in this context as what we do when chopping it apart with coding. There was already in some of the narrative that in the dialogue that there was some hint that it was coming from some family background or some unhappy marriage that people felt they need to compensate. And so there were some hints there already. Then you can make that the next topic of interest and then ask questions about that again. There is, for a more academic version, there is also a step 5, and that would be relating it to theory, but I left that out. But there could also be that way, even take it to a more abstract level beyond these 4 steps. Already talked a little bit about validation, certain overlap in the questions that was kind of showing, yes, it wasn't making up things, it was coming up with the same ideas again and again. So this is talking about, AI is making up things. Every time I ask the same question, it is giving me a slightly different answer. Yeah, and also to be more, to help also with validation. That's why I said, save your set of questions and you really copy and paste the same questions for all the subgroup you're working with. And it might be if in the first round that you go through that, you start adjusting your questions, as I already kind of mentioned, but it could also be if you have a second person, if you work in a team, or you get somebody to help you validate, so that the cross-person comparison. So you now basically there's no coding, you can't compare the coding, but you have your set of questions. So you can give a second person your set of questions and say, well, please take these interviews and go through these questions again, and then write a synthesis, and then we're going to compare what we get. And you will get something quite comparable. It might be a few nuances here and there that in some answer there is something mentioned that has not been in the other. So I've been trying that out. So on the whole, it will be probably 80% of the same. But so but it can only help if the second person, that person can say something about your question, and you can clarify the question or ask them maybe more clearly, and you can then compare what comes out. So basically, it's not that much. You compare the coding, but then if you don't agree with the code, then you do also look at the data and then see why that has been coded in that way. And the same you can basically also do with the synthesis, and then you can also then kind of converge with the things that have been in one synthesis and not in the other one. So there are possibilities of adding this academic rigor into it. I want to talk about it too long, but just to give you an idea, it can be all built in there. And if you don't have a second person, well, a week later, you're just gonna go through the battery of questions again, and then compare the answers and see what you get. So also that is a possibility. And going through these questions is, yeah, probably depending on how many questions we have. So I did have a number of those now, might take you 30, 45 minutes without, but there's this, and that's what I want to talk about briefly now. QInsights is in the cloud, as I already mentioned, but it's kind of its own it's a bit simplified, that image that you see here, with its own little fence. So we're renting some cloud space, and because we are doing that, we get all the security with double encryption and all the leading security standards that I don't have here on my laptop, but this data I have in the cloud. And within that little space, we also access LLMs, and so that it's all processed within that secure space. But we are in that place. Well, somewhere is a physical server, but we access it through the air, so to speak. And there is some traffic there sometimes, and sometimes it can be then a bit slower. So it's certainly slower than working with a generic chatbot. But that's when you enter your series of questions, and you can just copy and paste. And while the next question is going to be, analyzed, or the data is analyzed, you can start already reading the answer before. And depending on how much traffic there is, yesterday it was a different time of the day I did it, was a bit faster. And so just to let you know, if you try it out, it's a bit of a different feeling than what you get when you work with a generic chatbot, but you get this added layer of security around it. You get the fact that that's always about your data. There's no hallucination. And what we also heard from users is that the quality of the answer is better because we have a particular way of processing the data, which is also different from a generic chatbot. So you get all of that, and that might be worth the wait. So that's why it's not like quick 10 minutes, but it takes some time for the analysis. But while you're waiting, you can also start reading the answer and thinking about those. So just to give you some thoughts about that. If you'd like to try QInsights, well, here's the QR code. I can also, I think we have enough time for questions now. Yeah, we still have 15 minutes left, which is nice. I can also then copy and paste the link in the chat. Trial is completely free. You just register. You have to wait for me to actually activate your account. And then I also send you some material that helps you to get started.
Ask your questions, talk it through, explore, reflect, and synthesize. Let your data speak, your Rick, you're in charge to analyze. CA to the power of AI. Ask your questions, talk it through, explore, reflect, and synthesize. Let your data speak, you're in charge to analyze. CA to the power of AI. Ask your questions, talk it through. Step 1, start with themes or summaries. A bird's eye view brings things to light. Step 2, shape your path with questions wise. With open minds and goals in sight. Step 3, start the conversation now. Ask and follow where insights allow. Step 4, interpret right, your insights grow. Let patterns speak, let meaning show. Then loop again, go back, refine. Each topic takes its own sweet time. Steps 3 and 4, they work as one. Until your insight work is done. Is done. Step 3, start the conversation now. Ask and follow where insights allow. 4, interpret right, your insights grow. Let patterns speak, let meaning show. Then loop again, go back, refine. Each topic takes its own sweet time. Steps 3